Hello submitted. Hello YouTube. New video, new luck in the same freshness. And folks, Titus has moved in with a lot of people in the last few days or in the next 1 or 2 days. Remember folks, you have to merge him, not wait, and then he'll disappear. It's a fusion, you have to pick it up. And now many people are asking themselves, so how do I build Titus? Titus has been highly praised by everyone because he's capable of dealing incredible damage that basically no other hero in the entire game can do. But, and this is the big difference, I already called him the new best hero in the game during my live stream. For me, that's still Marius. And the big difference compared to Marius is that Marius doesn't need a team built around him. Titus, on the other hand, needs a proper team around him to create the conditions for him to deal that kind of damage. And that's exactly what we want to focus on today. Titus, how you should build him, which masteries to give him, which blessing, which relic, and so on and so forth. Which sets can you give him? What is recommended to really get the most out of him? And I'd say let's start with the classic. Let's first take a look at why Titus is actually so incredibly good. Titus's damage, basically everything revolves around his A2. The A1 hardly matters, and the A3 also barely matters, because the A2 just brings so much value. If you take advantage of that, then the rest really doesn't matter at all. He attacks a single enemy. This attack always lands as a critical hit. That means, in turn, we don't need any crit rate on him, which makes building this hero much easier. When the champion is under shield buff, so in every team where you want to use him, you always want to have a big shield, definitely. Right, and that's basically it. And now, down here it says something interesting. Damage based on defense and HP. And that's a small mistake. So while it's technically correct, the way it's actually programmed is that this HP value is misleading and even counterproductive. I don't want to show you the formula now, nobody really cares about that. But basically what you need to know is when you build Titus, you want to give him as little HP as possible. So if you have gear pieces, regardless of the set, and they have HP on them, don't upgrade those pieces. Yes, absolutely. You want his HP stat to be as low as possible. The lower it is, the more damage he deals. Conversely, his defense stat is extremely important. Defense is crucial. His defense stat needs to be as high as possible, while his HP stat should be as low as possible at the same time. The bigger the gap you can create between those stats, the better. Otherwise, focus on the speed stat. Speed is, and this is really important. It makes a huge difference. That's why you can't just say, build Titus at 230 speed. You simply can't generalize like that. It really depends on what kind of team you build around him. His speed threshold always depends heavily on the speed tune. Do you want to use him in the dungeon? Should he one-shot the Sand Devil? Should he one-shot the Shogun? There will be separate videos on all of that in the coming days. Or do you want to use him in Hydra? Do you want to use him in Chimera? That means the speed stat actually varies from maybe 190 in some tunes up to around 300. That's why you can't generalize it. As I said, it really depends on the tune. As for the crit rate, as we just mentioned, basically we only want to use his A2 at all. It doesn't matter, yeah. He doesn't need any crit rate at all. You can see mine only has 30 at the moment. But what's important is the crit damage stat. That, just like the defense stat, should be as high as possible. Those are actually the two most important factors. With Hydra and Chimera, you always have the problem well. With Chimera, it's guaranteed. With Hydra, it's situations sometimes your shield gets stolen, yeah. That can happen in longer fights. That's why I would recommend, if you can and you want to use Titus on Hydra or Chimera, make sure you get some resistance in there, around 450 or so. Right now we don't have any Chimera area bonuses yet. They won't be coming this year either. There was now the official confirmation from Plarium. They won't be added this year. Probably sometime next year then. So make sure you get a bit of resistance. If you want to use him on Chimera in Ultra Nightmare, you'll need significantly more HP. You're still 100 resistance short there. You'd have to change the build for that. But as I said, that's something to keep in mind, yeah? Don't neglect resistance. He doesn't need accuracy, because if you want to provoke with his A2, it can't be resisted, and if he has a shield buff. That's why accuracy isn't important. But if you say, yeah, easy, so wait, the best combination for him right now, as things stand, is to build him with 6 pieces of Savage Gear. You want to ignore 35% of the enemy's defense. There is no set that ignores more, plus 2 pieces of Zeal. Because Zeal ensures that if you or your Titus has max life, which he basically always does thanks to the Shieldem, he deals an additional 12% more pure damage, plus crit. That value gets triggered, increased, so it's simply the best set to maximize everything. But if you say, I don't have Merciless or I don't have Zeal, which sets would you recommend then? Any set that lets you ignore defense, whether it's the lethal set, the wild set, or the instinct set, you want a set that lets you ignore defense. The more defense you ignore, the higher the damage from his A2 will be. That's also why, conversely, the relic is relatively important on him. I know a lot of you out there don't have Cat's Eye, but it is actually by far the best relic you can use on him, because honestly, there just aren't that many relics that provide a real benefit for him. You could use the Dragonstone if you don't have Cat's Eye. That will further increase his defense value. You could also use... wait, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? It's down here. You could use the Crown, although I have to say the Crown is really only useful for Hydra because the damage increases for each debuff he applies. He provokes with his A2 every 3 turns. That means you'll be able to stack the damage up to 30% more over time there as well. Yes, that works, but with the Chimera you can't provoke the Chimera and you can't provoke in the dungeons either. So the Crown doesn't really help you much there. That's why it's better to go with something else in those cases. You can also use the Invisibility Scroll if you have Veil in your team. Even if you don't have active Veil in your Hydra team, for example, at a certain account level or after a certain runtime, Titus will most likely Veil himself. That's the passive from the hit that gives you True Fear. So it can also trigger that. And the nice thing about this Invisibility Scroll is you get 2 round stones. That means, of course, this is the perfect place for the Boss Slayer Stone, which lets you ignore defense. But apart from that, honestly, all the other relics are more or less not that interesting on him. You just have to be honest about that. Of course, you could also use what we just saw here, this dagger. Where was it? Here, this one, but 20% more chance, 10% more chance. If you don't have anything else, of course, just use something like that as a blessing. As you can see on my main account, I don't have the soul. I haven't done it, haven't even tried. It's definitely recommended if you have a blessing. If you have 6 stars, let's go from the top down. 6 stars is clearly the best blessing, Crushing Rend. Why? You ignore defense again, which means, as I said, ideally you want to have 100%. That's why with 6 stars, Crushing Rend is definitely the best choice. If you have anything below that, I would recommend prioritizing the Heavenly Gifter shot, whatever you want to call it, because the damage then depends on the number of buffs you have. And in a normal fight, you usually have quite a few. You want to have a lot of buffs, multiple shields on your own, and so on and so forth. So in that case, Heavenly Shot is also a good option. For a Hydra run, you could consider taking Nature's Wrath instead, because as mentioned, with Nature's Wrath, you get more damage for each debuff you place up to 30% at 6 stars. However, at 6 stars, you should generally go for Crushing Rend instead. But as I said, if, for example, you've got the soul at 5 stars, maybe from the Champion Chase tournament, then for Hydra, Nature's Wrath would probably give you the most benefit. In all other content, it's usually better to go with Heavenly Shot or Heavenly Gift. Yes, that really depends a bit on the intended use. Exactly. For the masteries, these are the masteries I would recommend to you. But here too, I have to say, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. These are the masteries I would recommend if you want to use him in the Chimera and in Hydra. Because the main difference really is what I want to tell you, there are just 2 small masteries. The main difference is simply the Cycle of Violence. Cycle of Violence gives you a 30% chance to reduce the cooldown of a random skill by 1 turn if the damage dealt by a single ability exceeds 30% of the target's max HP. This whole thing triggers on the Hydra. If you use the A2 and hit for 40 or 50 million, then you've reached that 30% and you have a 30% chance each time to reset the A2 by 1 turn. That means, in other words, you get to use the A2 more often on the Hydra or the Chimera. That's why Cycle of Violence is definitely recommended for longer fights. But if you want to use him specifically for dungeons, I wouldn't recommend taking the left path here, but rather the one on the right Relentless Ambush, because it increases the damage dealt by the first hit to each enemy by 8%. That means he gets to act once anywhere you want to one-shot a team. Do you want to one-shot the Shogun? Do you want to one-shot the Sandhöfe? Do you want to one-shot the Twin Boss? Do you want to one-shot the Spider? In all those cases, it's usually better to go for the Glassless Raid. In other words, instead of taking these two, go over here, pick this one up, and then proceed just as before. If you can't take that one, then take this one and then move over here again. Exactly. Those are the classic masteries I would recommend to you. Now the question arises, okay, so his damage is based on the A2, and the A2, well, the damage also scales with the size of the shield. And that's a topic I'd really like to discuss with you again, because it was actually a question that was often misunderstood. Currently, there are 3 shields in the game that we can use, and each of these shields adds to his damage. That means if we go in, now let's take Titus with us. Titus, and then let's just take Brogni as well, because Brogni applies a shield to us. Let's just take a look. Boom. We're not on the test server here, so we need to be a bit careful. Alright, we'll use his A2, and now we'll also use Brogni's A3, which gives us the shield. We have a shield, yes. That's the shield you get from each skill. It's always split into 2 parts, a blue and a white section. These are shields from skills, from abilities. Alright, now we see we use the A2, that was 170,000. Okay, not bad. 170,000. But if we now add my Lamassu, since she's currently running with a shield set, that will mean we'll have 2 shields in a moment. You can see here, this is the shield set. From the shield set, this is what it looks like. It's made up of several parts. And now we'll do the same thing again. Boom, boom. Now we have 2 shields. Yes, both last for 3 turns. We use the A2, and now we're at 145,000. Okay. And then there's also our Volcano Heart, or whatever the relic is called if you have it. You should give this one to someone on your team. That counts as an additional shield and increases the damage even more. Mutant, this is also a common misconception. The duration of this buff doesn't matter for the damage. It doesn't matter if we go in here again, whether the shield buff lasts for 3 more turns or 20 more turns. That doesn't affect the damage. Here it's only about making the shield as big as possible. We could also, just for fun, try it out now. This time let's not use the A3 to give him a shield. Instead, we'll just increase the existing shield. And now let's use the A2. Now we had 174,000. So the shield increase is something different from the shield's duration. Yeah, those 2 things have nothing to do with each other. In most runs, you just want to prevent this from dropping to 0, because then the shield is lost and your big shield disappears. That means the duration doesn't affect the damage. It's only about the size of the shield. That's really, really important and shouldn't be confused. Exactly. And yeah, that's basically it. Raise your defense, increase your crit damage value, and add resistance in specific cases if you want to bring him into a longer fight, like against Chimera or Hydra. Cat's Eye is very, very important, and otherwise, yeah, you're good to go. Like I said, guys, there will definitely be more videos coming in the next few days, whether it's about dungeons, Chimera, Hydra, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of content coming your way. Yeah, because a lot of people are asking, is the hero worth it? Should you build him? And so on and so forth. Yes, definitely. Of course, the question also comes up, what do I do if I don't have Brogni? What do I do if I don't have... And what do I do if I don't have either of them, or if I have an EhsieRSL, who you could also bring along? There will also be certain possibilities there. Butant, I have to be honest about this, his value and potential are a bit lower if you don't have either of those 2 heroes, or if you add EhsieRSL, if you don't have any of these 3 heroes. As of now, whether anything changes in the next few days, we'll see depending on what the community comes up with. With that, folks, you now have a first impression of how you should build Titus, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.